Shalom. All praises to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Rakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles, elders of Great Millstone, elder bishops of Great Millstone, and shalom to the prophets of that body, and shalom to the 144,000 and one third, the elect men, women, and children. And may peace and blessings be upon your households. Just checking out the latest news from a UK perspective, as well as I'm going to jump on another platform called WeOn, which is from an Eastern perspective, Asia, as well as the American side. So this tariff situation. Okay, let's just go into what a tariff is first. And by the way, copyright fair use. Okay, how do tariff charges work? How do tariffs work in simple terms? In simple terms, tariffs are taxes imposed on goods imported from other countries, effectively raising the price of those goods and potentially encouraging consumers to buy domestically produced alternatives. All right. So obviously, importers, buy stuff from abroad, and they've got to pay, huge taxes on that. And then obviously, those importers, they will pass on the extra cost that they've got to pay so they can still make their money, right? They're going to pass those charges on to the consumer. That's how it gets passed on, all right? As they say, it's passing the buck, so to speak, right? And so, hence the reason, you'll be paying a little bit more, because, the people at the top still want to make their money. Okay, so all right, here we go. Tariffs are taxes on imports which are paid by importing businesses in the country where they apply, and people are buying domestically. There was some footage in the news regarding Canada, Canadians saying, up middle finger to America, we don't want to buy this stuff. We're going to buy domestically produced products and services. And Canadians has such a solid stance. They were like even avoiding flying over American cities. Like for example, where you have like a stop for 2-3 hours, and the flight might be cheaper by a few $100 or whatever. And they said, forget it. I don't want to fly to. I don't know. I'll give you an example. Let's just say I don't want to go to. I don't want to fly I don't want to fly from Vancouver to, I don't know, whatever. I don't want to fly from X city in Canada to go to New York and wait there to get back to Toronto, for example, right? Which is pretty nearby. When you look at it on the map, obviously it's still quite far, right? And but they're neighboring, okay. And the individuals are saying that, what, I don't want to go over America. I don't want to like stop off there, right? I'd rather pay the extra money to a Canadian company, to a Canadian business, and go stay within the borders of Canada, right? So it's getting to that point where it's Satan casting out Satan, Esau versus Esau, all these Edomites that are in the stolen countries that they're in, America versus Canada, Canada versus America, et cetera, et cetera, all the Edomites that are against each other, and obviously other parts of the world that are coming against America, looking at America sideways. Ultimately, it's going to be the demise of, leading to a recession. Okay, because when when people are paying more for goods and services, okay, especially those that are a necessity, all their money is going to go on the necessities. They're not going to be spending money on extras, as they say, disposable income. Disposable. Let's see what's. I'll give it 1 second. What is disposable income? Income remaining after deduction of taxes and social security available to be spent or saved as one wishes. Okay, that's one way of looking at it. But another angle also is income after, your necessities are paid for, your food, your lodgings, or your rent, or your mortgage, or your fuel, any toiletries you need for that month, any necessity of clothes. You know, you need to buy more drawers. I don't know, another pair of whatever you got to buy, a couple of pairs of shoes, whatever. Once those things are taken care of, what do you have left over for, you know, going to the movies or, you know, so-called luxury things, extras? All right, people won't have the extra money to spend on these extras, so therefore it's going to affect the small man or the little man, which will in turn close other businesses. Hence the reason, um, you know, around the world you're seeing a lot of clubs close, you're seeing a lot of malls close because there's not much online traffic. So not online, sorry, there's not a lot of foot traffic to these stores anymore because a lot of physical stores like you know, will say to you, okay, if you buy these sneakers online, right, they're 10% cheaper. There's a discount code, right? Like I went just over a year ago. No, not just over a year ago. Less than that, because you know I usually buy stuff online these days because it works out a little bit cheaper. You know, you can buy. Sometimes I like to go buy stuff from a physical store. You know, the ones that are still around. But the lady said to me, you know, do you want to buy these now or do you want to wait to order it? And I said, F it. You know, I'd rather just buy it now and get it out of the way. You know, she goes, if you buy it online, it's it's £10 to £15 cheaper. You know, which is about $20 to $25 cheaper at the time. And I thought, okay, it makes sense because a lot of this is enticements to stop using physical stores as well. So people are saying, you know what, F it, I'm gonna go, I'm just gonna buy online. You know, which obviously affects the brick and mortars and people working at these brick and mortars because humans won't be required to work on brick and mortars when brick and mortars don't exist no more. So it's like an ongoing, um, what's the term? A domino effect on everything. All right. I know I'm waffling on a bit, but you understand what I'm trying to say, right? It affects one thing, affects another. It's like a chain reaction. All right. This is what the definition of chain reaction is, because I like that term, chain reaction. Definition of chain reaction: a series of events so related to each other that each one initiates the next, a number of events triggered by the same initial event, a self-sustaining chemical or nuclear reaction yielding energy or products that cause further reactions of the same kind. But this is beautiful. A series of events so related to each other that one initiates the next. Okay? And that's what's going to happen. It's going to initiate the next. All right? All right? And we are approaching the end of Esau's kingdom. All right? Okay, 2 Ezra 6, verse 9. For Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth. All right. Let's go to another one. Job 14 and 5. Seeing his days are determined, the number of his months are with thee. Thou hast appointed his bounds that he cannot pass. The Lord Yahweh Shemashai has set a finishing line for this devil. Right? All right. But what Esau wants to do is make that finishing line into a rubber band so he can, expand and expand, try and stretch his kingdom out, try and draw it out, and maybe even try and take it to a new world order. All right. But that's not going to happen. All right. There's a finishing line. All right. There is there's a day and a time coming where the needle will stop. I don't know what time it will be, but it'll be some point where that needle will say, okay, boom, the clock strikes, whatever. I'm just saying, and then that's that. Esau's time is finished. And that time is very soon. We're not talking years. It could be months. All right. All right. Me personally speaking, all right, only no man knows the day or the hour. No, like when all these things will happen, but we're watching out for the signs. And the major sign is the charagma, which is Revelation 13:16, which is the mark of the beast. And that's going to happen when the financial infrastructure collapses. And obviously World War III as well, which is going to lead off the back of these things happening, the financial infrastructure crashing, the mark of the beast, and World War III popping off. All these things will be like, happen as as mentioned, a chain reaction, right? That's what's going to happen. It's a chain reaction. One thing leading to the next. All right. Let's go to this part. Let's go to this news. Damn it. What's going on now?
Right, Donald.
A damn commercial now.
Eat Sleep's brand new.
Damn commercials. Slovakia.
Donald Trump addressed the financial chaos of the last week by trying to minimize the wild swings in the stock market and growing trade war with China.
We think we're in very good shape. We think we're doing very well. Again, there'll be a transition cost and transition problems, but in the end, it's going to be a beautiful thing. I have great respect for President Xi. He's been.
In the end, it's going to be a beautiful thing. I read in between the lines. They said, "Oh, in the end, it's going to be a beautiful thing." Where he looks down. Okay, we know what his beautiful thing is. Okay, but he's not going to get to that beautiful thing that you want. That new world order won't take place.
In a true sense, he's been a friend of mine for a long period of time, and I think that we'll end up working out something that's very good for both countries. I look forward to it.
This evening, there was clarification the tariffs on China are actually now at 145%, not 125%, as Donald Trump posted yesterday, which sent the Dow Jones Index down further today.
And China makes pretty much everything, okay? They pretty much make everything. Do you remember the days when you used to buy a pair of Timberlands? They would be made either in the States or Europe, right? Okay. And they'd be made in it from if it is made in Europe, they'd be made from a country that's got like a, it doesn't have like a negative spin on it. It's like a solid country. It's it's the financial infrastructure of it is solid. The same way you say, okay, Mercedes-Benz, what comes in your mind? Germany, the Temanites, the Edomites. Even though the vehicle is invented by an Israelite, of course, the so-called black man, Hispanic and Native Indian, right? But these crackers, put a spin on it. They, claim all our inventions, but nevertheless, when you think about Mercedes-Benz, it's Germany, right? Now, if you bought Mercedes-Benz today and it was made in Sri Lanka, you think, what the hell? Mercedes-Benz made in Sri Lanka, Man, I don't want that. But you got no choice. It's still an okay car. You might buy it, unless you want to buy something else. A Cadillac made what? Escalade made in India. Nah, I don't want that. The same way, like you buy a pair of, I don't know, Ralph Lauren polo T-shirt made in Bangladesh. Timberlands made in, I don't know, Vietnam or some shit. Everything's made in the East, okay? And the clothes and all these items are not even made to a real good standard. I mean, I'm just talking about clothes. I'm talking about everything. Everything pretty much comes from there. You could buy a sieve like for your tea. If you make tea with loose tea leaves, right? That sieve is from where? China, Taiwan, or something like that. Okay, a good portion of these items are made from the East, and a good portion of these items come from China. Hence the reason why these Chinese are all over the world as well. Okay, so is this definitely going to affect the economy? Like as mentioned, chain reaction, one thing leads to the next. And not for the good, and not for the good either. Not in this case anyway. It's nothing but for the demise. And they're doing this, man, just to bring in the mark of the BEAST, because they want to bring in their what? Their Elysium, their new world order, which is not going to come to fruition to the level that they want it to anyway. They're going to think it, but it's not going to get to that level.
I mean, we're down 10.5% year to date.
Yeah.
It feels like we're down a ton more than that because we've mentally been through so much.
Donald Trump's on-off tariffs have sent indices gyrating up and down by huge margins with dizzying speed.
It's one comment from the president that you got to look out for.
Markets fell after so-called Liberation Day with a steep plunge on April the 7th. Then, after days of volatility, they surged yesterday on news most tariffs were being suspended before tailing off again today. Amid all the turmoil, questions about the president's social media posts. Just before markets soared yesterday, he told his followers it was a great time to buy.
I find it wholly inappropriate for the President of the United States to give stock tips on his social media
Another small hatter
platform.
For Congressman Mike Levin, who's campaigned to crack
Levin.
down on politicians' insider trading, this all seems highly suspicious.
I would like to know, what did they buy? What did they sell? And did they have any material knowledge of the president's pending decision to suspend many of those tariffs?
Look at that. A rendition of Mount Seir.
In the Oval Office last night, he openly hinted at the vast profits some were making while the world stared into the financial abyss.
He made $2.5 billion today, and he made $900 million.
The world is changing
As
around.
countries around the world scramble to reach a trade deal with the White House, the British Prime Minister was unable to tell ITV News when he last spoke to Donald Trump.
My team are in contact with the president's team every day.
So you haven't spoken to him?
Well, I've spoken to him frequently, as you know, both on the phone and met him a number of times.
Yeah, but not
the
since you put the tariffs on.
The teams are discussing every day and seeking to do what we can to mitigate the tariffs. But I've equally been clear.
It does, with respect, Prime Minister, it feels like he's not taking your call. Is that what's happening?
No, not at all.
In the Oval world,
Films like Minecraft the movie are part of the collateral damage of this trade war. After China said it would reduce American imported films, shares in Warner Brothers fell almost 12% today.
Markets did sell off today on uncertainty about Trump's tariffs.
See how one thing leads to another? This is a chain reaction. See how it's going to affect everything. Okay?
That's
Part of a broader Wall Street sell-off as the reality of this new era of protectionism dawns. Dan Rivers, News at 10, Washington.
Well, the recovery in share prices here and in Europe may seem like good news, but they still have a way to go to get back to where they were only 8 days ago. There is, though, one potential silver lining to the dark trade war cloud of trade war for mortgage holders, as Shihab is about to explain. Shihab.
Yes, potentially good news as this all impacts interest rates too, which are now expected to fall faster than before. Why? Because this has hit economic growth. And the hope is that interest rate cuts might give the economy a bit of a boost. It also means the mortgages are coming down. We're even starting to see some being offered below.
There's not going to be no economic boost. As mentioned, they're always going to come with some kind of silver lining in the cloud, as mentioned, like these guys. Give you the doom and gloom, and then come up with a silver lining. Interest rates going to be cut, etc., etc., etc. All right, but number one, there ain't no jobs. Okay, number two, people are not being paid. They're just dues in terms of money. You've got inflation rates. Everything's going through the roof. Okay, obviously, ground zero, America is being hit harder because that's New Egypt, New Babylon again, right? And then it's affecting everywhere. All right, those of you that are old enough to remember how the world was 25, well, not 20, say 30, 35 years ago. It was a very different place, very vibrant, we were younger. It was a lot more so-called fun, right? Now you look at it right now, it's just, it's terrible, all right? I mean, we understand why, and it's good, that it's happening, but these youngsters don't know what, how the world was before. A lot of them watch old school movies or whatever and shows they can see, okay, yeah, it was better before, right? But a lot of them just are used to, being in this kind of environment. So a lot of people are going to get caught off guard. But those that are in the know, they can see that, things are not looking bright, okay? They're not looking bright. Not at all, in any shape or form. Let's go to this guy, Richard Wolff, all right? Professor Emeritus, University of Massachusetts. I'm just going to play a few minutes of this guy.
I don't think this is correct. Is it a possible outcome? Yes. We're in a situation, let me put it this way. Tariffs are not new. They've been around for hundreds of years. If you teach a course in international economics, which I've done, you tell students, here are 1,000 books, here are 5,000.
Once again, copyright fair use. We're making no money out of this. I'm just collaborating some news that's on the same temperature and wavelength.
Articles, we know. And the answer is when you impose a tariff, you don't know what the outcome is because it depends on everything else going on. Interest rates, exchange rates of currencies, rising or falling economies around the world. You can't know in advance. It's a very risky thing, which is why for the last 50 years, we have had, administered by the U.S., something called free trade or neoliberal or globalization. All of that is over now. The United States can't win anymore.
Exactly. You can't win anymore. Let's go to scripture quickly. Ecclesiasticus 3. To everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under this. To everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under the heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to pluck up that which is planted. A time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up. Well, it's a time to, let's keep going. A time to weep and a time to laugh and a time to mourn and a time to dance. All right. Now it's a time to pluck up Esau's kingdom. The Lord is plucking it up. Okay. And it's a time to break down Esau's kingdom and a time to build up Jake, time to build up. A time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance. All right, it's a time to mourn, okay, for the Edomites, these Babylonians, all right, because this is their rulership ending. But for Jake, is spiritually dancing inside, is elated. Yeah, you go through the rigors of, of day-to-day activities that you got to go through. The Lord is trying you, all these kinds of things, but that comfort is there through the spirit and power of Yahweh Hashem Shai. All right. A time to cast away stones, and a time to gather stones together, and a time to embrace, and a time to refrain from embracing. The love of many has, paraphrasing scripture, has waxed cold. People don't embrace no more. People don't even commiserate like they used to. Not like how it used to be 25, 30 years ago. All right. I remember back in 1999 when the so-called New Year started, and then, that bullshit December the 31st crap. You could feel like a negative energy in the air, man. You could feel that, oh yeah, we're approaching a different time now. And as this guy says, Wolf, Richard Wolff, okay? Let's listen to it again. America can't win anymore.
In that system, all of that, something called free trade or neoliberal or globalization, all of that is over now. The United States can't win anymore.
Nope, no more.
In that system, so it is reverting to economic nationalism. And that's a fundamental shift that throws the world. It was the accepted wisdom for 50 years, the last 50 years, not to do what Mr. Trump is doing now. If you want, you can think that everybody who thought that way for 50 years was wrong, and Mr. Trump, the genius, is correct. But that would be a long shot. Better bet he's trying to save his own political life, and he's trying to cope, to his credit, with a declining economy without having to admit that that's the case. This won't end well. It normally doesn't. And what we're going to see is the fighting against one another of the Europe bloc, the Asian bloc, the American bloc, at a time when the United States is weaker than it has been economically and politically. Look at the debacle in the Ukraine as well. The misunderstanding that the Russians could turn to the Chinese and the Indians to cope with the costs of that war in a way that hadn't been calculated and is turning out to shape the outcome. And it's not a question of which side you're on, but just watching how it lines up. That's the problem.
30 seconds. As you often talk about, are you saying this is the beginning of the end of American empire?
Yes. I think we are already in 10, 12 years of that decline. It can't. Here's a single best statistic. If you add up the GDP, the total output of goods and services in a year for a country, of the United States and its major allies, the G7, it's about 28% of global output. If you do the same thing for China and the BRICS, it's about 35%. They're already a bigger block of economic power than we are. Every country in the world thinking about building a railroad or expanding its health program, they used to send their people to Washington or London to get help. They still do. But when they're done, they send the same team to Beijing, New Delhi, Sao Paulo, and they often get a better deal. The world is changing, and the United States could cope, but as with alcoholism, you have to admit you have a problem before you're in a position to solve it. We have a nation that does not yet want to face what this all adds up to.
Well, it's the end of your demise. It's going to lead to World War III. Okay, and and obviously the financial crash of this. There'll be the economy crash, the financial crash. Okay, everything will implode, explode. All right, and it's leading towards that. This is from last night. 1 second, time to come last night. Yeah, 1 day ago. Let's see what they're saying in WION. Damn, 23 hours. Refresh the page. There's a live stream. I guess it's gone now. Okay, let's see if I can find it again. Okay. Israel will lead Iran's strike if nuclear talks fail. Trump, US-Iran talks 17 hours ago. US-Iran war. Donald Trump warns Iran of great danger as a set for direct nuclear talks. If talks fail, Iran will be in great danger. Iran to strike US. Iran warns neighbors not to support Trump amid nuclear threats.
All done soon?
Yep.
Damn commercials. Come on, for fuck's sakes.
Tensions have reached West Asia teeters on the West Asia.
In every disaster throughout American history, there always seems to be a man from Harvard in the middle of it. Thomas Sowell.
West Asia teeters on the edge. U.S.-Iran tensions have reached. West Asia teeters on the edge.
West Asia ain't no Middle East. West Asia. Elder Malcolm of GMS Chicago always touches on that.
U.S.-Iran tensions have reached a boiling point. Military maneuvers and diplomatic standoffs dominate the landscape. Our next story takes a closer look at the situation. Are these dangerous final moves before an unstoppable conflict?
West Asia stands on the precipice of dangerous escalation as tensions between the US and Iran are peaking. Both nations are rapidly intensifying military preparations, with Iran's armed forces declaring full combat readiness, and the US deploying advanced missile defense systems and heavy.
Let's see what Google says. Why would America and Iran go to war, World War III? Why would America and Iran go to war?
According to Wikipedia, the United States attributes the worsening of relations to the 1979 to 81 Iran hostage crisis, Iran's repeated human rights abuses since the Islamic Revolution, different restrictions on using spy methods on democratic revolutions by the US, its anti-Western ideology, and its nuclear program.
Okay, because they're probably more than, it's a whole hodgepodge of different things. And, by the way, America can't talk about any kind of human rights. America's, treated the sons of God, the Israelites, like crap. And I'm just using a very light term, okay? Since forever, all right? Fucking crackers can't talk none of that bullshit. And that's why these other nations talk about the atrocities that they've committed. And Esau's like that, Esau's saying that, okay, yeah, I can have all the weaponry, you can't have jack shit, And they're not afraid of America like they used to be, the time of Reagan and prior to that when America was a superpower, Everybody needed America, like that crack fiend or that heroin addict that needs a dealer. They really want to smack the dealer up, but if they batter the dealer or do whatever, the dealer's got backup, the dealer's got a crew to come and get you. And on top of that, you're not going to get your fix, right? Now, the other countries have got like methadone. They've got something to keep themselves going. With that, they're not going to cluck. They're not going to get sick, right? And also they've got support, and they're getting a little bit stronger as well, physically. They're not relying on America like a pimp or a drug dealer. They don't really need them anymore. So the muscles are being flexed. The Lord Yahweh Hashem Yahshua is putting the spirit on these individuals to behave in a certain way, to lead to the demise of the so-called white man's kingdom. All right? The Edomites. That's what the so-called white man is, Esau.
Firepower across the region. The specter of war grows larger with every passing day. Iran's military leadership has issued stark warnings to adversaries.
The tariffs and the taxes and the economy is all part of it also, along with, the talking of nukes and things of that nature. All right?
Emphasizing its readiness to counter any threat. Brigadier General Alireza Sabahi Fard, commander of the Khatam al-Anbiya Air Defense Base, asserts that Iran's air defense capabilities, bolstered by indigenous systems, could...
So let's see what people are commenting. Y'all think Netanyahu is in America to talk about tariffs? Fucking hell, not this at this point in time. Poor people suffering already enough. Last thing the world needs is another parking lot. Since North Korea got nukes, America began to restrain its actions. Iran better think. The US weapons that nobody knows about and have never witnessed before. Remember in 1991 when the F-117 flew into Iraq undetected? Most Americans didn't even know of its existence. They still fly F-4s, for goodness sake. All right, basically, they're saying that, America has got better weaponry. Okay? Regardless if one side is, I'm giving an example, regardless, right? If one side has got 1,000 nukes, the other side, America has got 2,000 nukes. Those buttons are going to be pushed, all right? But the thing with Iran is, it's not just going to be Iran against America. It's going to be everybody against America, all right? So it's not going to be nukes that's coming from one specific country. It's going to be nukes coming from all over the damn place, Other parts of the world are going to get hit too, but America is going to be decimated. But there's something called allies, all right? And Iran has them. Let's see, a list of Iran's allies. A list of Iran's allies for World War III. Syria and Iran are strategic allies. Syria is often called Iran's closest ally. The Arab nationalism ideology of Syria's ruling Ba'ath party notwithstanding. Okay. World War III map. Which countries are allies of Iran? Let's check it out here. Oops. Shit. One second. Where's that down? Which countries? The group is allied with Iran, Syria, Russia, Lebanon, and Iraq, and also alleged to be allied with Cuba, North Korea, and Venezuela. Where is that part? I just want to find that bit. The countries listed. You know, we know, but I just want to just see it. Read it. Okay, the group is allied with Iran, Syria, Russia, Lebanon, and Iraq, and also has alleged to be allied with Cuba, North Korea, and Venezuela, although the latter two have denied the partnership. Well, you know, a general is not going to reveal their war tactics, you know. You're not going to go into the boxing ring, for example, and say, yeah, I'm going to hit you with a right hook first, or I'm going to give you a jab, you know, and a right cross, you know. But anyway, like as mentioned, the main thing what I was trying to get at is it's not going to be, you know, one country that's against America. It's going to be many.
Surprise enemies. Recent upgrades in radar technology and over-the-horizon systems have significantly enhanced Iran's long-range surveillance and early warning capabilities. The U.S. intensifies its military buildup. A second THAAD missile system has been deployed to Israel. Projecting power as tensions rise. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has rushed to Washington amidst growing uncertainty, while President Trump blames Iran for the October 7 terror attack on Israel.
We had no problem with the Middle East. Everything was done. We had no problem with Iran. We had no problem with anybody. And then you had October 7th. And that was all because Iran, as you know, was not giving money to anybody because they had no money. Now they have a lot of money. So we'll see what happens.
Moscow is hosting a Russia-China-Iran nuclear-related meeting. Both Russia and China warned the U.S. against military action. Moscow says it is willing to help reduce tensions between Washington and Tehran. Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has placed Iran's military on high alert while issuing warnings to neighboring nations, including Iraq, Kuwait, UAE, Qatar, Turkey, and Bahrain, not to cooperate with U.S. forces. Tehran asserts that any such cooperation would be treated as an act of hostility with severe consequences. Despite the escalating military postures, Iran has expressed openness to indirect negotiations with the US regarding its nuclear program, preferring intermediaries like Oman to facilitate dialogue. However, Tehran remains steadfast in rejecting direct talks, viewing them as yielding to American pressure. Euro Report Huion for this one.
No one's going to bow to you anymore, devil. Okay? All right, they know your time is up. Okay? You think these other nations around the world, pursuant to Psalms 83, they don't know who you are? You talk about human rights, they bring up the Israelites straight away. And you crackers got to like quiet down. They know what time it is. They also know they need to like get a grip and take America out as well, because they know whose rulership is coming next. All right, and these other nations will be joining in when Yahweh Shai returns in the chariots to fight against the Lord along with America. Okay, so the Lord is moving the chess pieces, man. All right, it's not long. All right, it's not long. Okay, Revelation 11:14. Let's go to the last scripture. Revelation 11:14. Woe means bad times. All right. Hence a new speak term, war, W-A-R, world war. The second woe is past, which was from 1938 to 1948. Sorry, 1938 to 1945. All right. The first one was 1914 to 1918, then 1938 to 1945, and now we are approaching the final one. The second woe is past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly. All praises to Yahweh, Ba'Hashem Yahushai, Ba'Hashem Rakah Kodash, Mawatha Ba'Babal, Kwam Yashrala, Shalom.